Okay, good day, everyone. I hope you are doing great. So in my screen, I have here a picture. But before that, I need to know how many of you are left-handed and right-handed. Okay, so if you are a left-handed, so therefore you are a right brainer. That means you develop most of your brain, a right part of the brain. So unsa man imuhang ma-develop when you use your left hand. So you are a lefty. If you are a lefty, so therefore you are a right brainer. So that means you have intuition, you focus more on love, and you like poetry, you want freedom, you like passion, you have vivid view, you are creative, you are yearning, and you love peace. How about those mga right-handed? So right-handed people develop most of their left brain. So for example, ako right-handed. So most of the students are right-handed. So if you are a right-handed person, you develop the left part of your brain. So you have here, I am the left brain. You are decisive. So that means you make decisions. You are logical. You focus on reasons. So in contrast with the left-handed, so you focus on logic, they focus on intuition. Kaning mga right-handed, they focus on making reasons, justifying reasons, mga logical reasons. Here, you will focus on intuition. Well, we have here, in the left brain, you are accurate. Okay. You are analytic. You love reasons. Since you are logical, you can focus in numbers. You are practical. You are strategic. You want to make control. You want realistic, and you love science most of the time. So, ang kaning diring mga right-handed, they are logical and reasonable. They love control. They want to experiment. Kani sila diri. Focus ni sila sa rules. So, ang kaning mga left-handed, they love art. They love freedom. They want to express themselves. They want music, poetry, and any sorts of art. So in the Bloom's taxonomy of learning, so this is Benjamin Bloom. He is a educational psychologist who developed a classification of levels of intellectual behavior important in learning. So he studied how students learn and what are the skills they will develop as they learn. Then this became a taxonomy. Taxonomy means classification, including 3 overlapping domains. So there are 3 domains of learning according to Benjamin Bloom. We have here the cognitive domain, affective domain, and the psychomotor domain. Okay, so cognitive domain, that is pertaining to cognition. Okay, cognition or mental or thinking process. Okay, mental thinking process. Affective domain pertains to social, emotional, attitude nga development. Psychomotor domain, psycho meaning psyche, and motor, so that means the mind and body skills. Okay, mind and body skills, mind and body coordination. So according to him, we will need to develop the brain or the mental aspects of the students, their attitude, as well as how they will use their mind and their body. So Bloom's taxonomy is one of the most recognized learning theories in the field of education. Educators often use Bloom's taxonomy to create learning outcomes that target not only subject matter, but also the depth of learning the students to achieve, and then create assessments to accurately report on students' progress towards these outcomes. So we widely use the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, how? For example, in creating the learning objective, take note that the very first step according to systematic approach in learning, sa may first step of buhaton sa maestra, it was defining the learning objectives or define the learning outcomes. So how do we define the learning outcomes, or how will we create the learning outcomes? In creating the learning outcomes, we will use the Bloom's taxonomy of learning. So the Bloom's taxonomy of learning will help the teacher in creating the learning outcomes. Then also the Bloom's taxonomy of learning will help the teachers create what kind of assessment he will use. So why use Bloom's taxonomy? First, the Bloom's taxonomy helps the teachers write and revise learning objectives. Take note, this is the first step in according to the systematic approach of teaching. Katong akong video gi-share ninyo. Second, it plans the after you write the learning objectives, your intentions, you will now design and plan the curriculum. What activities you will use, what approach, what method, what experiences you will give to your students. The Bloom's taxonomy helps identify the simple to the most difficult skills. So we can identify which skill is easy and which skill is difficult for the students. The Bloom's taxonomy effectively align objectives to assessment techniques and standards. So with the help of Bloom's taxonomy, we can align all our assessment. Like, unsa man imong gusto nga type of test gamiton. Okay, multiple choice ba, true or false, essay. Next, it can incorporate knowledge to be learned and cognitive process to learn. So here, we can develop the different skills of the students. Dili lang kayo pag-recall of information, but also apply this information and create new knowledge. And lastly, it will facilitate questioning. So when we know our learning outcomes or learning objectives, we can create questions that can facilitate learning. So today we will discuss the Bloom's taxonomy of learning under cognitive domain. So in traditional view of the Bloom's taxonomy of learning, learning is viewed as noun. Noun pa na siya. Okay? They view it knowledge. Then in the new or revised Bloom's taxonomy of learning, ang kaning learning will not be a noun but not a product but a process, meaning verb na siya. So sa una, they view learning, the first step of learning is knowledge. Sa karon nga panahon, in the 21st century, we view the first step of learning as remembering. Sa una, after knowledge, we view learning as a comprehension. In the 21st century education, in the OBE, after remembering, we will measure the skills of the students to understand. In the traditional education, after comprehension, we have the application of knowledge. But in the OBE, we will test the skills of the students in applying knowledge. In the traditional education, they view the next step of learning as analysis. But in the OBE, we will test the skills of the students in analyzing. In the old generation education, the next step of learning is synthesis. But in the new generation, nabali na siya. Instead niya ang synthesis, then ang last kay evaluation. In the OBE, ang evaluation will come after analyzing. So it will be remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, then evaluating. Asa man ibutang ang synthesizing. So instead of synthesizing after sa analysis, ang synthesizing will be termed as creating, and it will be done after evaluating. So according to Bloom, that you can only achieve the skill in creating if you master all the previous skills. Okay? So creating is the last step of learning. So muna ni siyang pinaka-last. Mag-create, for example, mag-create og story, mag-create og song, mag-create og art piece, okay? Mag-create og lyrics, script, okay? So let us continue. So these are the levels of cognitive learning. There are how many levels? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it will start with the skill of remembering. So when we say remembering, it is the ability of the students to recall facts, basic terms, and concepts. So basic remembering lang, yun ang recall, okay? And these are the terms that we can use to develop the skill in remembering. So we will use the verbs like define. Okay, for example, define the 6 trigonometric functions. Describe. We can also use the term describe. Example, describe the art made by Vincent van Gogh. Okay? So, makita ganyan mo nga mga verbs. These are the verbs na gamiton para to develop the skill in remembering. Another one, identify. Example, identify the parts of the computer. Name. So, that is another verb. Okay? Name the parts of the computer or name the parts of reproductive system. Recall. Example, recall the cities, major cities in the Philippines. Another is state. Okay, for example, state the vision, mission, goals of CTU. Label. Label the parts of a sewing machine. List. Okay, for example, list. Okay, sa man itong mga example ani. List the parts of the plants. Okay, we can also have enumerate. Okay, enumerate the 6 levels of cognitive domain. Kana. Memorize, match, recognize. So if you see these verbs, these are the verbs that can develop the skills in remembering. So example, so sa tuang test last time, I observed na ang gipangbutang sa uban kaning mga verbs. So what I need you to what I ask from you is to give an example. So this is an example under remembering. Recite the VMGO. So you will not give the verbs, but instead you will use the verbs and make an example under remembering. For example, recite the VMGO. Enumerate the different parts of a computer. So nagamit ta og recite, nagamit tag enumerate. Remember the names and relationships of cast of characters in a play. So there are many other verbs we can use to develop the skill in remembering. I will share it to you later na, but these are examples. So again, remembering is the first level of the cognitive learning. So for example, when you meet somebody, okay, so unsa may imuhang develop or masud sa imong una, you will remember the face, you will remember the name, okay? So in remembering, the learner is able to recall, restate, and remember the learned information. So these are some of the verbs we can use. Describe, find, identifying, listing, retrieving, naming, locating, recognizing. So muna siyang pinaka-first nga level, and this is the simplest level of the cognitive domain. In here, we can measure if the students can recall information. So muna siya kung magtudlo tag cooking sa cooking nga subject, unsa man tong buhaton una, you will allow your students to memorize the different kitchen utensils. Okay, if makaila ba sila sa lain-lain nga kitchen utensils. So after remembering, pag ila-ila in Bisaya, unsa man, understanding, pagsabot. Okay, natin nga nakaila ka nako pero wa jud ka kasabot. So, muna siya, understanding is deeper than remembering. So here, definition, explain the ideas for students. So students should explain. Okay, that's why naatay essay nga part, you need to explain a particular concept. Okay, this is to test your skill in understanding. So what are the verbs used under understanding? Ma-detect na natong understanding na siya. Okay, i-test na to ang pagsabot sa estudyante when we use these verbs. Restate, translate, interpret, explain, discuss, classify, distinguish, differentiate, report, express, give example, illustrate, express, nabalik, and report, nabalik sa. So what are the examples under the skill of understanding? Example number 1, distinguish a prose literature from poetry. So for example, muna ko nga kanang distinguish assessment from evaluation, distinguish or differentiate measurement from assessment. Okay, that means I want to see your understanding about these two concepts. So if maka-compare, maka-contrast mo ana, then that means you really understand the topic. Another example, understand and explain the main ideas of a play or piece of literature. So in understanding, students grasp meaning of information, so they need to understand the idea of a certain concept by interpreting and translating what has been learned. So you can use the terms classifying, comparing, exemplifying. Exemplifying meaning you give examples, explain, interpret, inferring, interpreting, paraphrasing, summarizing. So when the teacher asks you to say it in your own words, that means you need to express your understanding. Here, in understanding, students are tested if they can explain ideas or concepts. Next, level of cognitive domain. After understanding, so kung sa ganing remembering, pag-ila-ila. Next, understanding, pagsabot. Sunod, so atong example ganiha. So in the cooking class, in some remembering, you ask your students to memorize the different kitchen utensils. Here, understanding, understand the function of each cooking utensil, for example. Applying, so diri apply na, meaning imuhang i-apply imong nasabtan, so that means imuhang nang gamiton ang imuhang nasabtan. So kaila ka unsa nang kaha, nakasabot ka sa unsay purpose sa kaha. Then you will apply the skills, your knowledge in kaha. That means you will use now the kaha. Okay. Apply. So maning apply meaning imuha nang gigamit ang imuhang knowledge. So it's like riding a bicycle. For example, before you ride a bicycle, you will need to understand unsay mga panganan ng parts sa bicycle. So kanang manubila, sa pamanana na ligid, unsay kanang pedal. Okay? So after na ma-explain na nimo different parts sa bicycle, imuha na ng sabton kaning manubila para liko-liko, kaning pedal kay para maka-move forward. Yeah. Identify nimo para asa ning brake, para muhunong or mupahinay. Then apply. So when we say apply, imuha nang gigamit ang bike, meaning imuha nang gigamit ang unsay nasa imuhang nasabtan, imuha nang gi-apply. So definition, you use information to new other situations. Okay? So for example, these are the verbs that we can use to develop the skill in applying. Apply. For example, apply the Pythagorean theorem to solve right triangles. Demonstrate. Demonstrate the skills in problem solving. Demonstrate the skills in dancing. Okay? Dramatize, especially sa English subject. Employ. Illustrate. Draw. Operate. Example, operate the computer, practice, schedule, sketch, solve, use. Example, use the 6 trigonometric function in solving the triangle. Write a poem, write a letter, write a story, write a script. Execute, so meaning imuha nang gibuhat. Example, solve a word problem. Demonstrate the skills in drawing. Write an advice column corresponding to one of the characters in a play. So, for example, unsa sa remembering? Sa remembering, you can remember the characters in a story or in a play. In understanding is you understand the roles of each character in a story or a play. Okay? Then in applying, give an advice to a particular character in a story and a play. Unsa man imong ma-advise sa kaning character or sa kaning story. Okay? So, in applying, students make use of information in a context different from one in which it was learned. So, for example, maghatag og example si teacher. Okay? Example number 1. Then, in applying, you give your students an exercise para, example number 1, how to solve the area of a square. Okay? Muhatag kag example, then makaibaw na sila sa formula, niya saan paggamit ang formula, tagaan nimo sila og lain nga solbadonon para na sila chance to apply their knowledge and skills. If kamao, makita sa nila nga, if kamao ba yun sila mo gamit sa formula in solving the square. So these are the terms in applying, implementing, carrying out, using, executing, and katong mga verbs nga kung i-share ganina. So in here, we can see if the students can use the information in another familiar situation. After applying, we have the skill. We need to develop the skill in analyzing. Analyzing meaning you break down the whole parts into smaller parts so that you can understand each part. Okay, so imuhang analyze meaning imong scrutinize maayo. Imuhang igagmay-gagmay until sabto nimo ang ginagmay nga idea para mas makasabot ka sa tibuok. Here you draw connections among ideas. So when you break down the ideas, you make connection between ideas or among ideas. So these are the parts, the verbs we can use to develop the skill in analyzing. We have here analyze, organize, relate, compare, contrast, differentiate, distinguish, discriminate, examine, experiment, question, test, investigate, break down. So if makita gini nimo nga verbs, depende ni siya sa level sa iyahang idea. Okay? If makita nimo ni nga verbs, then that is under analyzing. The difference between analyzing and understanding, ang kaning understanding, this is a narrow type of learning. Ang kaning analyzing, this is much deeper. Mas laong ni siya, yan, mas wide ang kaning analyzing. Example, compare and contrast the administration of Duterte and Marcos. Second, analyze the roles of each character in the play or in a story and their relationships to each other. So these are examples sa analyzing. So again, in analyzing, students learn information into parts to best understand that information as a whole. Okay, so buak-buak ko nimong idea, analyze nimo tagsa-tagsa para mas makasabot ka sa kinatibukan. So these are some of the verbs: attribute, compare, deconstruct, find, integrate, organize, outline, and structure. So here, we can test if students can break information into parts to explore understanding and relationships. Nung makabantay ta, na yung mga bata, bitaw nga, kanang gaan mo og toys, ilang duwa ng toys until maboard sila ilahang noong bungkagon. Okay, bungkagon. Kay nganong bungkagon man na nila? Kay para mas makasabot sila nganong ni function na og ingana. So napoy mga tao nga tagaan yung bike nya after nila duaan kanang makaibaw na sila mo bike mag-explore na sana sila ilahang ilisan og parts, ilahang i-upgrade. Okay? Muna siya another type of skill, analyzing. Understanding by parts. Next, after analyzing is evaluating. Here, students will judge the value of information, materials, or methods for given purposes. Okay? So, you will judge, you will evaluate. Okay? And here, you will make justifications sa specific na decision. So, what are the verbs we can use to develop or create the skill in evaluating? We have appraise. Okay, appraise the value of math in your life. Okay, argue, assess, evaluate, judge, compare. So ang kaning compare na ani siya nga term sa understand, analyze, evaluate, pero ang kanin siya, this is a deeper degree na niya, ng laom na kayo. Defend, estimate, predict, rate, support, value, weigh up. Okay, so these are the verbs we can use to develop the skill in evaluating. Example, critique a research paper. So ang kani siya, taas na ni siya nga level kay mag-critique naman kamo bitaw na ang kung mag-contest ang atuang piliun nga judge kadto nang daghan og experiences. Okay, daghan na og achievements. Kay kadto sila mas daghan to sila og knowledge. Then expert na sila na, master na sila sa kanang competition. So they can give a good judgment or evaluation. Okay? So damo ni siya nga kung kabalo na ka sa remembering, the understanding, applying, analyzing, then you can evaluate. So for example, dance sport. Okay? So ang kanang mga judge sa dance sport, so dapat na sila background or experience ana so that they can give a sound judgment. Kay bawo sila sa unsay mga steps, kasabot sila sa mga sa mga rules, standards, kay bawo sila mo apply, mo analyze, then they can give better evaluation. So same with our students, after remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, they should have the ability to evaluate. Okay, so for example, critique a research paper, evaluate the decisions of characters in play and support your evaluation with textual evidence. So for example, pabasahon og story ang mga students, then you will evaluate if sakto ba ang mga decision sa taga-characters sa usa ka story or play, then you will justify or support the answer. So in evaluating, students makes decisions based on in-depth reflection, criticism, and assessment or judgment. So term ang checking, okay, critiquing, detecting, experimenting, hypothesizing, judging, monitoring, testing, evaluating, and the terms I shared to you a while ago. So in here, we will test if the students can justify a decision or a course of action. And the last and topmost level of the cognitive learning is what we call as creating. So again, this is the last part because here, after mastering these skills in remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, ari evaluating, ari na ta sa creating. Okay, so for example, nilang Moira. Okay, so master na siya ng remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing. Then na-invited siya as a judge sa katong usa ka specific nga competition sa to nga sa ABS-CBN. Then she will not only judge but also create songs. Okay, so with our students, they should not be only developing the skills in remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating. They should have the ability to also create something based on what they learn. So for example, mag-create sila poem, create sila song. Okay, here students will produce new or original work. So in math, for example, they will create their own problem and they will also find the solution sa kana nga problem nga ilang gihimo. So what are the verbs that we can use so that we can develop the skill in creating? We have create, design, develop, formulate, generate, organize, plan, prepare, propose, set up, assemble, author kag story or poem or script, compose a song, compose an essay, construct. Okay, mag-bake og cake. Okay, kana, cook their own recipe. Examples under creating, we have design an original homework problem dealing with the principle of conservation of energy. Another one, create a new and unique piece of writing using similar plot devices. Okay. So, in creating, students create new ideas and information using what previously has been learned. So these are the terms: constructing, designing, devising, inventing, making, planning, producing. Okay. Then here, students, we will test if the students can generate new products, new knowledge, new ideas, new designs, new solutions, or new ways of doing things. So that would be all for today's class. So again, what are the six levels of kaning cognitive domain? We have the remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So I hope you learned something today. Thank you so much for listening.